Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Can you hear me, Donna? Can you hear me, Donna? Is the audio coming through? Hmm. Let's see here. Sorry, give me just, okay, perfect. All right. Well, welcome back to Design 250. I hope that all of you had a nice break, and I hope you had some nice holidays, a good new year. Um, Mine was very nice. We're actually got a ton of snow here last night, so I'm looking out my window at pretty much nothing but white, including the roads, unfortunately. But so sometimes it's hard, after these holiday breaks to jump back in where we left off. But we're going to need to do that quickly with this one, just because we do have a lot to do on this before the end of this week. Um, Today, what we are going to be doing, a lot of what we're going to be doing is going over the portfolios again. I'm going to go take a look at the ones, your revised ones that were submitted, and do some feedback from me in class. Um, the thing with graphic design is there are certain rules that need to be followed, but in addition to that, it can be subjective. What I may notice something that someone else did not, or I may have a particular viewpoint on it that someone else does not, and they may have a different one that I don't, and so on and so forth. So because of that, getting feedback from multiple sources can be a really good way to refine your work even further, and push it to become even more professional and more ready for your portfolio. So you've gotten your revisions from your AD, you've made those revisions. This week you're going to get critique from me, and your assignment for this week, we'll go look more detail in that in a minute, but is going to be to make those revisions based upon my feedback, taking it even a little further forward. Now, like I talked about last week, if you have a reason that you disagree with one of my critiques, if I say that something should be changed this way or that way, and you feel like, oh, you know what, actually I did it that way for this specific reason, then please by all means talk to me about it, and we'll and if you can show me why that was done that way and that it works well with design, then great. But it does have to be for a specific reason. It can't just be like, well, but I like it, I think it looks fine. But it has to be something backed up by the principles of design, by the rules of design. It's creating alignment with this. It helps to balance it in this way, that sort of thing. Okay. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to go over the announcements for a second. I'm going to talk about some templates that I'm going to have available to you. And then we'll talk about lynda.com and the course reading for this week, and the IUGA community. We're going to talk a little bit about constructive criticism, and then about the discussion for this week and the resume for this week. And then we're going to talk about revisions, and we're going to talk a little bit about passion and the principles of design again. And then we're going to get into the critiques. Okay. So let's start by looking at our course announcements. Well, first of all, I should point out this promotion they're doing right now. They're actually giving a giveaway. Again, like I said, it can be difficult to get back into school again after a break like this. So because of that, they're trying to encourage people to really jump in, feet first. And we have the daily checkpoint today and tomorrow. And they're actually going to be giving away randomly 20 Amazon.com gift cards, $50 gift cards, to people who did their daily checkpoints today or tomorrow. So in order to be entered to win that, just go in and do your daily checkpoint today and tomorrow, and you'll have a chance to win one of those $50 gift cards from Amazon.com. All right. And I apologize. For some reason, I woke up super sneezy today, so you'll probably have to blow my nose and occasionally sneeze, unfortunately. I'm not sure why. Okay, so I'm going to post today our Learning Coaches hours for this week. We had the Learning Coaches hours for the break there, but let me actually just pull them up right now so you can see them while we're here talking. Let's see here. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, just open this. So this is Christy's hours for this week. She's going to be available tomorrow from 12 to 7, Thursday from 4 to 9, Friday from 5 to 10. So if you have any need for her, I'm going to post these in the the announcements later today. So you can go in there and get the link to her contact information if you need some one-on-one help from her. Okay. Now, the other announcement that I had in there is that I finished all the grading for week 1, but that was some time ago. That was actually the Monday after week 1. And so several of you have submitted since then, and I will be going in and, anything that's there, we're going to talk about in these live sessions, either today or Thursday, but I'll also be going in and doing the grading as quickly as possible too, so you should see your grades show up there. Now, I'm going to go in the announcements later, and I'm going to post some templates. So any of you that are struggling, that are trying to do revisions for any of these particular assignments, the Banker Magazine, the CD insert, the kayak, the menu, the milk carton, I'm going to post some barcodes and nutrition things and stuff, the State Trooper Magazine, the T-Box, the Walmart walking guide or map, and the wine box. I'm going to post the actual templates from the course and stuff in there. So you can go in there and download those if you need them. Also, though, if there's anything else you need that's from another class, please do email me and let me know. I can't always get it, but generally I'm able to go back and dig through the courses and pull out templates or any sort of materials like images and stuff that you got of the class that you may need to do your revisions. All right. Now, one second here. Okay, so let's jump into the class, look at the reading for this week. Well, videos for this week, mostly, I should say. Here in week 2, if you go into the readings and tools, you're going to see that we've got a few things here. So we've got this using content marketing to craft a personal brand. Now, this is a very important thing, creating your own brand as a designer. So this website here has this article, and please do go and read it. In addition to that, we have some lynda.com links that are available, again, through the Lynda link in our course. This week, it's going to be up and running with Behance. So you're going to learn more information about getting your Behance website set up if you need that. One of them is designing a portfolio website using Muse. Now, some of you may already know that, but for those who don't, Muse is a very great tool for creating your own portfolio website as well, but you have more custom control over what you're doing than you would on Behance. And so this is a great course for learning how to create a website. It's an hour and 10 minutes using the Muse program. And then we've got a course called Start with a Theme, Creative Portfolios and WordPress. WordPress is another tool that you can use for creating portfolios, and then a couple of videos in there that go over using some of the plugins that are available in WordPress for customizing a portfolio if you'd like. So make sure and watch those and read that article for this week. And also, again, make sure to take advantage. You all have access to the IUGA community. Go in there real quick. And in here, you've got forums. You can get feedback from people. You've got this resources and tutorials section that has a whole bunch of information here on Behance, or if you're interested in doing more with Muse, general design tips, all sorts of great information. And you're going to have this, you have this now, and you're going to have this after you graduate too. So just keep in mind that you have this resource available. If you haven't already, now's a good time to get in there and explore it and see what you have available, because it will help you for this course, but also you'll want to remember it afterward. All right, so let's talk a little bit about constructive criticism, okay? So as this says, constructive criticism is the foundation to learning and growing. It is not meant to be taken as an attack on you or your design work. Please, if you have a clear rationale for why you're thinking something should not be changed, by all means, email me and we'll talk about it professionally. So, when students get started here, quite often one of the very first questions I get asked is, what's the hardest thing about being a graphic designer? And obviously, I think that varies for individuals. Some people have a harder time with certain areas than others. But one area that I think is commonly difficult for graphic designers is accepting constructive criticism. And the reason is we all put a lot of work into our designs. You're really kind of putting yourself out there on a pedestal in order to create something and show it to people and say, this is what I made. And because of that, it can be hurtful or sensitive. You can feel sensitive when people come back and tell you things that possibly didn't work out as well as you wanted them to, or things that you may not have noticed, or things that may not serve the purpose of the design as well as you wanted to serve that purpose. So just understand that this is a very big part of our work. And here in this setting, we will always keep it professional, and we're not going to say anything insulting or anything. It's always a matter of learning and growing. But just understand that it's something you're going to have to deal with throughout your entire career. And honestly, you kind of have to develop a bit of a thick skin and kind of separate your work from your personal feelings, because from professionals, you're going to get a lot of constructive criticism. But you also just may occasionally have a client or something like that just doesn't like what you do. They just have a different style than you do. And that can be frustrating, but just understand that it's nothing personal. It's just part of doing this job as graphic design, and try your hardest to kind of separate out your personal feelings from the work that you do, as far as the sensitivity to them, and understand that someone saying, hey, this doesn't look right, has no reflection on you as a person, has no reflection on your even your overall skill set. It just shows that in this situation there's something that needs improvement. Okay, so look at it from that point of view, and just understand that anything we talk about, your AD talked about, that I talked about, it's not meant in any way to be insulting or hurtful. It's meant to push you forward and help you grow as a designer. All right. Now, revisions. Revisions are not optional for this course anyway, okay? When given suggestions for change, they need to be implemented to strengthen the principles of design, focal point, color theme, etc. If for some reason, again, you disagree with the suggested change, email me and provide a rationale. I'm open to speaking with you professionally to come up with a solution. My job is to push you to another level as a designer. Your portfolio is one of the most important tools in securing a position in the industry, so paying attention to the small details is very important. Each round of revisions will build upon the last. And again, we're talking rounds of revisions, okay? And again, that is realistic for the workforce afterwards. Generally, your work will go through a few rounds of revisions before it's done. I'd say a minimum for my work is going through about 3 rounds of revisions before it's actually a finished piece and ready to go. Now, this is something that I want you to ask yourself and give yourself an honest answer to, and that is, do you have a passion for design? So the thing is this something you're passionate about, or something you thought would be an easy degree? Because a lot of people do. They get into it, and as if you know you're at this point in your degree, you've learned it's not easy in the least bit. But this is the time to really be honest with yourself. To me, graphic design is my passion. I live and breathe it, whether I'm teaching you fine folks, working for clients, or expanding my skill sets by working on new techniques. I still get excited over projects, and I push myself to uniquely solve the problem in all aspects of design. I also find myself constantly looking at other people's work, looking at tutorials, learning new tricks in the programs, playing around with new styles or new trends that are coming out in design. If I struggle to find the answers, I go out and look at nature, surf the internet, look at case studies, or even watch a movie. So it's so important to take breaks for inspiration and to find that balance. Otherwise, you can get burned out. And understand that inspiration can come from anywhere. Like I said, I love looking through magazines or looking on the internet in order to get inspiration. I love film in every way. I also look at things like architecture for inspiration. Anything from nature to man-made or our own imaginations can show us ways in which we can come up with something new, something different, and drive ourselves further and get excited about something. So the reason I bring this up is if you feel, even that you feel that you have a kindling of a passion for design, in order to really be happy in this field and to do everything that you're capable of doing, you want to fan that kindling. You want to drive and create that passion. And a lot of that is going to come from working, and whether that's working for clients or for yourself or for family or for friends, spend time on your own designing things. Spend time designing something you would love to just see. It doesn't need to be something that someone has paid you to do. It can be just something that you would love to see done, that you'd love to do. Also spend time looking at the designs of others, going and looking at what other people are doing, because that can really, really help drive a passion. But regardless of what your technique is, look for that passion, because it makes all the difference in the world in how happy you are in your field, and it also makes all the difference in the world in how successful you are in your field. Now, throughout your design degree program, you have and will learn many skills that will take you from student designer to the professional designer. As a student, you must reach beyond the course content and sharpen your skills by doing outside projects for yourself, family, friends or family, or even clients. This is the only way you'll be able to go from a beginning level designer to a professional. And for many of you, this is your very last course, and for others, you're continuing on with your bachelor's degree. But understand, in either of those situations, your learning can't stop. You need to consistently be growing and learning as a designer, and a lot of that's going to come from looking at outside sources and work, whether it's paid work or just for yourself or friends, family, getting stuff done. With these skills, you'll be using the principles of design. The principles of design help you to organize, create balance, simplicity, and focal point. You have already learned the principles. However, it's not enough to just know them. You must be able to commit them to memory as well as know when and why you use them. So we're going to talk a few minutes to refresh our minds on the principles. And I know we already talked about this again last week, but we're looking at revisions again. We want to really make sure that we're focusing on these principles. The principles of design direct the connection between the elements used in the design, help organize the composition, and help to unify designs as one cohesive unit. A successful design utilizes the principles to convey a cohesive message efficiently. They also help to organize images, type, graphic elements in an ordered manner to create hierarchy, flow, balance, and visual cohesiveness, to bring visual interest and a logical flow to form a greater impact on the target audience. So, back to here again. What are the principles of design? Well, first we have contrast. Principle of contrast states if two items are not exactly the same, then make them different, really different. Again, like I talked about, similar is generally your enemy. You want things to be the same or very different, repetition or contrast. Next, we have the principle of repetition. The principle of repetition states repeat some aspects of design throughout the entire piece. Alignment. The principle of alignment states nothing should be placed on the page arbitrarily, or randomly is another word for that. Every item should have a visual connection with something else on the page. Now, this is one that people struggle with because it sometimes just feels fine to just stick something randomly on a page, but that's something we want to avoid as designers. And then proximity. The principle of proximity states that group related items together, move them physically close to each other so that the related items are seen as one cohesive group rather than a bunch of unrelated bits. Okay, so again, we need to always be keeping these in mind. And we looked about this a bit last week. So let's talk about ways to implement them. So how can we build contrast? Well, we can do it with color. Color contrast is definitely one that's very useful. From font variations, and from the shapes we're using, from the size of things, we've got color again, etc. Now, and I showed you those videos last week, and this is something that I want to again repeat, and that is that repetition is what we use to build the stage for contrast. If everything's different, there's no contrast. We don't really notice it. The way we notice contrast is when most of the things are the same, and then something else or a couple of other things are very different from those things. So let me give you just a quick basic example of that. Okay, so I'm going to just flip this artboard. Okay, so for example, if I have, let's take this rectangle here. And let's set it to, I want this to be in inches. Okay, so if I set this to be 0.5 inches wide, okay, and I'm going to move this so that the left side of it is 0.5 inches over. And then I'm going to go and make some copies of this. Oops. That one in the wrong place. Now, if I was doing this professionally, I would be fine-tuning to make sure that everything is actually exactly where I wanted it, spacing-wise, but we will count this as close enough for our purposes. So if I have this, so what principle have I utilized here, Donna? Actually two. Well, actually three, but what's kind of the main principles you see utilized just so far? Oh, can't think of any. Well, proximity, yeah, they are definitely close together. Yeah. What about repetition? Do you see repetition there? Yeah. And contrast is another big one because these are such a sharp contrast from each other as the black and white. However, repetition is really kind of the big one that we're seeing here. Now, if I were to take this and I probably wouldn't do that with one so close to the middle, but if I were to do that, then we've got some pretty strong contrast being created because of the fact that you have all these lines that are the same width, and all of a sudden you've got one that's very, very different, right? And that draws your attention. We see that right away. Wow, this line, for some reason, is really different from those other lines. Now compare that to this. So before it was this line here that contrasted and really stood out from the other ones. You should notice that that line doesn't really stand out anymore. There's nothing that's really going to draw my eyes specifically to this line versus all of these other ones. And that's because I no longer have repetition. I no longer have this repeating element that makes my one different one contrast with it. Does that make sense? I have to have a stage set for the contrast, and that stage is a repetition, right? Same thing would go with color. If I came here and I created some boxes, and we'll just do those ones. And now I go into my color panel, and I just grab some colors. Now, so none of those colors really particularly jump out. You know, they're just kind of there. They're not bad. They're there and they're fine. But none of them are really like the one that draw my attention, right? However, if I were to get out of the way, if I were to come in here and crank down the tonal value on most of these colors, okay, now, is there a color that stands out more than the others? Exactly. So this turquoise blue is so different in the light of it that we immediately see it. Just our eye goes right there because of the fact that it's so much brighter than the other colors. Okay, so again, repetition in the weight of something, the color of something, the brightness of something, the shape of something, things like that are going to be what is used to create that contrast that we want in order to guide people's eyes to the place we want to see. I'll show you one more example. So, and I'll just use the same color for all of them. Okay, so here the contrast is being created by shape, right? You have all these circles, all these rounded shapes, and that would work if they were, if it was just smooth lines or whatever. I used straight circles, but it doesn't have to be straight circles. And then in the midst of those, you have a very angular, pointy shape, and that's going to create that contrast, right? So again, contrast and repetition are going to work together in order to create a pleasing design, and also in order to guide our viewers' eyes to where we want them to see. Okay? So keep those in mind as we're working on these things. So now let's talk about, and with the contrast, I want to point out, so we were talking about, shapes and colors and things like that. A lot of time we're working with text. And keep in mind that the repetition is built with text by the font choices we make, by the alignment that we choose, by the size of the fonts, and that consistency of repetition will make a very big difference in helping people to easily move their way through a document with significant amount of text on it. Okay. So now alignment. How can we strengthen alignment? We can use consistent alignment types, like left, center, or right. Although we don't generally want, centering text is more for headlines and things. We don't want to generally center a lot of body text. Never use too many alignment types. Wrong two there. We definitely want to make sure that we're being, again, consistent in creating repetition with the type of alignment we do. Using baseline grids, that's a big one. Or just using a grid in general, using a design grid is very useful. And aligning every element to something else on the page. How can we reduce or strengthen proximity? By reducing the space below subheadings in a group of information, right? Getting the actual information closer to the subheading. Making sure contact information is placed together. Making sure to decrease space between bullets, body copy, etc. Really think about, when looking at your design, what things are related to each other, what things go together, and then make that actually happen. They make them go together. So those are things that we need to keep in mind as we are working on these things for the week. Now let's take a look at our actual work for the week. So first of all, we have a discussion here on career choice. So the discussion says, please address the following questions. 1, do you hope to work in the web design field or print design? 2, is there any particular type of company you want to work for? And then 3, what are your favorite design programs to use? I use Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, and why? Remember, for this discussion, same rules apply. We need to have our initial post in by Wednesday of this week, so Wednesday midnight, so tomorrow midnight. And that initial post needs to be at least 150 words. Then you need to reply to at least 2 of your classmates' posts, and those replies should be at least 50 words, and at least one of them should be on a different day. You don't want to do all of them on the exact same day, and those need to be done by Saturday at 11:59. Okay. So any questions on the discussion for this week? Okay. Next. Whoops, that's the wrong week. We have I mean, we'll go to this one. Graphic designer resume revise. So you guys submitted your resumes last week. I went in and when I graded the resumes, I wrote some specific feedback in the comments of things that I would recommend in order to improve on those. I also, if we have enough time, I might go through them in class on Thursday. Depends on how long these portfolio ones take. But your job for this week is to carefully address the comments that I made and then to make those revisions and resubmit this as a PDF file with the revisions in place. Okay, and if you have any questions about my comments when you read them, please let me know, and I'll help you to understand what I was talking about. Okay, so any questions at all on the assessment 2B for this week? Okay. Now, assessment 2A, this is the big one for this week. We're going to be doing a critique in both this session and Thursday, okay? So we're going to be going over your revised PDFs between now and Thursday. And I'm like I said, I'm going to be giving you additional information, and you're going to then make the changes that I talk about, okay? So very similar to what we did last week, only you're going to be basing it off of my feedback, taking these revisions one step further, and then resubmitting those. Now, some of you still haven't submitted the PDFs and revisions from week one. Please keep in mind that tomorrow is the deadline, is the absolute deadline for that. I can't accept them after tomorrow. So please, please, please get those in either today or tomorrow, and I'll probably email or call some of you individually to remind you. But we really need to have those in because if they're not in by midnight tomorrow, then you cannot pass the course. That needs to be done by that time. And so today we're going to be doing a lot of the ones that were already submitted, and then on Thursday we'll be finishing up the ones that were already submitted and plus any additional that came in tomorrow. Now these ones, this assignment, it's due on Saturday at midnight, just like normal. However, it just like how last week was, it cannot be submitted any later than Wednesday of next week. Okay, so again, if it's not submitted by Wednesday of next week, then you can't get the credit for it. So please make sure you're setting your time accordingly in order to get this done. Obviously, preferably on time, so that you don't have a 20% deduction, but at the very, very least by Wednesday of next week. Okay. Just like this week, we're going to use Adobe Acrobat Pro to combine the files into a single PDF. It can't be any bigger than 14 megabytes. And then you've got the same naming convention. And then we're going to be doing critiques of these submissions next week, of these resubmissions. Okay. So any questions on assessment 2A for this week? Okay. All right, then. So what we're going to be doing for the rest of today are these critiques then. However, I'd like to just, so we can kind of stay on the same topic as we finish up, I'm going to go ahead and we'll take our break right now, okay? So we'll take a 15-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll get started with these revisions. Let me go ahead and these critiques. Let me just set a timer here. And I'll see you in 15 minutes. Okay, we are back. Can you hear me all right again, Donna? Can you hear me again, Donna? Maybe she's not back yet. I was a little skeptical whether the audio is working on this, but I guess we'll just go forward here. Let me write a message to Donna here. All right, well, so we're going to start off looking at yours, Donna. And let's see here. Okay. So we'll start off with your menu here. First of all, I like this Italian menu thing down here, like with the banner behind it and the kind of rough, like charcoaly look to the banner itself. That turned out really nice. On your logo, one is it looks pixelated. So are you using the raster image, the Illustrator file that was given for that, or has it been rasterized in some way? If you're not sure, that's one thing I would really double check. Make sure that you're using the vector image for this, because we want to get this nice and clear. I want to get rid of this pixelization. In addition, the image is getting cut off a little bit. You can see over here on the left side of this loop, it kind of gets just cut off the tiniest bit. Oh, hey, Donna. All right. We're going over yours first. So if I hadn't said much at all before you came back, so just watch a little bit of the recording. But the main thing I was talking about here is this image here in the front is pretty rasterized. Do you know if you've got the original vector image in there? Because it's just got a lot, like it's losing a lot of detail with it, like looks pretty pixelated. So that's one thing I would just double check. Make sure that you're using the original raster image from this course, and that it hasn't, or sorry, the original vector image from this course, and that it hasn't been rasterized somehow, so that this is nice and sharp. Okay. And then secondly, it's getting cut off a little bit in your frame. So if you see the bottom of the P's are just chopped a tiny bit, and the left side of this loop is chopped a tiny bit. So there's if you want to use the white background, just make it a little bit bigger, or you can make the logo a little bit smaller within it. So there's a little bit of padding between the edges of the logo and the edges of the white background. Otherwise, you could get rid of the white background and see how this would work. I think you'd have enough contrast with that green. I would keep the white background in the loop here inside the oval here and the sleeve and the hat, but you could get rid of just the white background on these edges here and have that just lay over the green of the menu itself, and that would look pretty good. Now, because of the fact for this to go in your resume, you're going to want to get rid of this stuff here, the page number and the Gino's Pizza shade. You want to have that, make it so that it's as a finished menu rather than as a school piece, by getting rid of those. Okay. Now, moving on to here, when this image here looks like it's been stretched a bit, is this minestrone. So just go in there and make sure that you've got that at the right dimensions. And one way you can, if you've already placed an image, let me open InDesign and show you this. So if I come in here let's say that I make a frame for an image, and then I come and I grab an image and I put it in that frame. Okay. And let's say that I somehow get the image distorted. There's lots of different ways I could do that, but we'll just go ahead and do it like this. I'll manually resize it in there. Let's say I make the mistake of just manually fitting this into the frame when the frame isn't necessarily the same proportions. So now this B is kind of, distorted in there. In order to get this back to where it's not a distortion, and by the way I can tell, if I double click on it so that I'm looking at the shape itself, this up here, see how these numbers are not the same? It's telling me that it's 43% wider than the original, that's like narrower, but 43% the width of the normal one, and 30% the height of the normal one. So that means it's actually smaller height-wise than it is width-wise, which is what's throwing off the proportions. But anyway, I can fix that really quick and easy by just using the fitting options. You can right-click on it and go to fitting, or go up to object and fitting. And if you just choose to fill the frame proportionally or fit the content proportionally, then it will go ahead and resize that to where it's not stretched anymore. Okay, so you'll just want to do that on this one here. I was saying in the referrals, I like your banners. I think those look really nice, those weathered black banners on there. I would probably get rid of the green stroke on the text. It starts to blend in, and you lose some of, like, for example, if I zoom in here, you can see how we've got these little tiny white dots that are the centers of the D, plus we end up with some additional dots here, like between the A and the T. Like the strokes are blending together and leaving these little dots of space, which is going to make it harder to read, because we look for those little dots of space in order to determine what letter it is. Like, a dot like this, our eye would automatically think, oh, this must be an A or a B or one of the other ones that has a hole in the middle, but it's not. It's just between a T and a U, right? So we want to keep the letting from like running in, or sorry, a stroke from running into each other this way. I would personally just get rid of it. You could just do the text in that green color if you wanted a contrast. That could look nice. But yeah, I wouldn't use the stroke on that. And then here, we're going to want to reduce the leading on this line. So we've got add a super salad to any sandwich, pasta or entree for just $3. So that's all one sentence. So again, using the rule of proximity, we want to make sure that this is close together. Like, you've got these two lines really close together because they're one sentence. We want to do the same to that. So you could reduce that, and then you could just kind of bring the whole thing down a little bit, since that would create some extra space down there at the bottom. And then with this word special, again, I would get rid of the stroke, and then I would increase the tracking a little bit so it's not quite so close together. Don't necessarily want them to be like running into each other like that. If you wanted something, to make it stand out as different, instead of a stroke, you could do maybe a black, maybe another banner behind it or something like that. But yeah, I would get rid of the stroke on it. All right. So we got some nice clean lines on it, though. I like that. There's the same feedback on this page as far as the stroke is concerned. Also, be very careful that you're getting consistent spacing between like subheadings and text. If you look, there's quite a bit more space here between that legendary combinations and loaded than there is between Toto's and salami, or going down from there. So just make sure to close that up, make it the same as the other. And it looks like you might have an extra space at the beginning of legendary. You see how that's not quite aligned with the text below it? But if you move down to these, they are. So I just double check, make sure that there's not extra space there, or whatever needs to happen, get it so it's left aligned right there. So be careful. This is going to be kind of tough because you're a little tight here. But you've got a couple of things that would be good to fix with this paragraph here. One, we've got an orphan at the end with the word cheeses. It's such a narrow paragraph, it's not as big of a deal. But you want to avoid hyphenating words like marinara. Again, it's going to be tough because of how narrow this is. You may want to just make this picture a little smaller so there's more room for the word marinara to go there, and give a little more padding on the right side. And that might, depending on how much of a change that makes, it may affect the cheeses. The cheeses isn't as big of a deal. It is technically an orphan, but it is a very narrow column, so that might not be as big of a deal. But if you can find a way to get something so that maybe Asiago and cheeses was on the same line, that would definitely be better. All right. And so just looking these over, seeing what else. So again, going back to repetition, so like if you look, you've got the special section that has meatballs and Gino's classic lasagna, and then you've got this appetizer section that has broccoli dip and garlic bread. And they're not the same, but similar, right? They've got, they're both kind of pulled out, same fonts. But notice this one here is centered. So you've got broccoli dip and garlic bread centered with each other. This is left aligned. Also, you've left a lot more space between meatballs and Gino's classic lasagna than you did between these two items. So you've got two separate items there with quite a bit of space between them, two separate items here with no space between them. So I would bring those in line with each other. Honestly, because of the fact that you're using this specials thing and this brackets, I'd probably center this one, and that way they're both centered, and that can kind of be the theme for this type of pulled out stuff. But you could also left align this one. And then I would move these two closer together, get rid of that extra space so that it's aligned with this one over here. All right. Yeah, so going back to the marinara, just as kind of a general rule of thumb, in some publications, some people don't want you to hyphenate anything. Some don't mind, but you generally want hyphenates to be like at a natural breaking point in the word. Like homemade is hyphenating down there, and in my mind that's fine. But marinara is doing marinara, and that's not really a natural breaking point, so that's why you want to avoid that. Okay. So with this, sorry, just looking at the two of them. Again, sticking with the same, so you notice how you've got chicken favorites, and then these two are nice and tied up against chicken favorites, right? They move up against it. Where down here, you've got Gino's Giant Meatballs, then there's a pretty big gap between what the meatballs are. Also, Gino's Giant Meatballs, like the chicken favorites is a pretty large subheading. Now, granted, you're also in the homemade pizza area, but it seems like that the Gino's Giant Meatballs might do better to be a little more contrasty. But if you were to close up some of these gaps here, bring things closer together in proximity, it'll create more room, which would allow you to do the Gino's Giant Meatballs and stuff with flavor more like a more stand out in size. And same with this would go up closer to the baked with to perfection. So again, try to keep the spacing consistent. Here again, we've got chicken favorites, and right below that is buffalo chicken. The same sort of thing would happen here. Right below Gino's Giant Meatballs would be spaghetti with giant meatballs. Right below stuff with flavor would be meat, cheese, ravioli. Right below baked perfections is Gino's classic lasagna. If you notice, as of right now, like for example, this line of text above stuff with flavor is actually closer to stuff with flavor than the line underneath it, right? But the line underneath it is the one that actually has to do with it. So we want to make sure that we're closing that gap in order to keep the principle of proximity. Now, and then again, so this has gotten quite pixelated here. So just make sure you're using the original vector image, and if you need that from me, let me know and I can get it for you. And also be careful because you're cutting off the bottom of the P's there, the left side of the B, and then possibly, it's a little pixelated, so I can't really tell, but possibly that right side too. So make sure you're, when you're doing your fitting, you've got a couple of options here. You've got fill frame proportionally, which will make sure that the whole frame is full, or you've got fit content proportionally, which will make sure you see all the content. So you're going to want to make sure to fit the content proportionally on this one so it's not cutting off those edges. Okay? Yeah, and high resolution, exactly. And let's see here. I might add a little space between these paragraphs just for that buon appetito. Make it stand out as its own thing a little bit more. And be careful, you've got the period for garlic bread, $3. This one is missing the period, so it says the cheese bread is $300, which seems a little high for cheese bread. And then over here, you've actually got commas instead of periods. So you want to do one period, the period for $1, period for broccoli dip as well. All right. Other than that, I think it's looking really good. Now on this one, going to your aqua excursions, first of all, make sure you're using a baseline grid in order to align your baselines. So if I come here and I create a line, let's see if I go to the word before and I just underline that, you'll see that it hits like about halfway through the line to the right. So make sure you use a baseline grid. See how that is hitting over there on the right side in order to keep the baselines of the body text all lined up with each other. Okay. And then you're going to want to have something to separate out the multiple paragraphs. So for example, here, should I reserve a double kayak and 2 single kayaks? And then the answer is a new paragraph. Well, first of all, this should be formatted bold like you have up here. So what should I bring on my adventure kayak tour? And then should I reserve a double kayak or 2 single? Those are both questions, so those should have the same formatting. And then you've got, do I need prior experience? You've actually got 3 questions here, so you want to format those the same. And then down here, you'll notice you've got space between the paragraph and the next question. So you'd want the same thing. Well, you give a little bit of space there, but you want to match the spacing that's here. And then over here, you'll see you've got 2 paragraphs, but there's nothing, you want to either use space between the paragraphs or a first line indent in order to designate it. If you did a first line indent, you'd want to use that consistently. If you do space between the paragraphs, you'll want to do that consistently. So whichever one you choose, just make sure you're consistent on it, but you'll want to make sure that you're using one or the other. Also, double check that you're getting the same amount of space between the subheadings and the text. If you look, like private adventure tour and then the text after it, there's not that much space between them. But if you come over here to kayak rental and the space after that, there's a lot of space between them. So make sure you're going in and making that consistent so they have the same amount of space between each one. So here, for example, you've got space after the paragraph, but then through the rest of it, there isn't. So make sure that, again, that that's consistent, that if you're using space after paragraph, you're using it throughout. And again, you've got a lot of space between about us and the next section. You want to have that be consistent throughout. In this column, you'll notice the text, the body text, isn't quite left aligned with the subheadlines or even with the second paragraph. We've got like kind of, like this one is the alignment is there, then it jumps back, alignment's there, jumps in. So make sure you get a nice clean alignment And same with here, a nice clean alignment between those subheads and the body text. And we'd want to reduce the space here, again, proximity. These bullet points have to do with this paragraph up above it, so we want to bring those bullet points up closer to that paragraph up above it. Make sure to avoid any orphans. You've got an orphan here with experience, an orphan here with NES, an orphan here with this operation. You're familiar with how to do a soft return, Donna? Let me go over and show you here. So if I'm coming along here and I'm just going to fill this with placeholder text. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that I've got a paragraph break right here. So now I've got this orphan, right? And I want to make it look better. I can put my cursor before the word before it, and instead of pressing return, I don't want to press return because return makes a new paragraph. So anything that was like space between the paragraphs, first line indent, all those things would go into effect because I did a new paragraph. That's not what I want. So instead, I'm going to do what's called a soft return. A soft return tells the program, I want to move this to a new line, but I don't want to make a new paragraph. And a soft return is done just by holding shift while you press return. So I'm holding shift, I press return, and you see how that brings that down there. Now that made this stick out quite a bit more than I wanted to. So I'm going to do another one here. Okay. And I'm not really loving that. So I'll do one there. And it's getting better. I've got some weird long words here, but I can use those soft returns in order to get this, get rid of certain hyphens that I don't want, and get rid of orphans that are on their own line. Does that make sense? So if you were to come here and do a soft return between Wilder, that would bring that down. Then that's going to make this line stick out quite far. So maybe you'd want to do one before the A to bring that down. And then same here with operation. You can just do it before the oper and it'll bring that down. Actually, you want to do of operation, and then maybe you do it with and. But you just use that soft return to try to balance out these paragraphs so you get nice smooth lines, but you also don't end up with these orphans on their own line. Okay. All right, moving on to this one here. So this has got a nice fun look to it, nice and bright. There's an issue going on here where you see how you've got a little bit of a lighter color here and a little bit of a lighter color there. Sometimes that's just a PDF issue, but go in and just double check if you've got a background, something with a fill there that you can get rid of so you don't get these lighter patches of yellow over on that. Make sure your alignments right here, this for refreshing T should be left aligned with this paragraph below it. And move that back a little bit. An orphan there with taste, so you could soft return the 2 down there if you wanted to fix that. Now here, you notice how these first 2 lines ending with so and T are quite a bit further to the right than these bottom 2. You could fix that by doing a soft return of T down there, and then maybe one of so down to the next line. And you can play around with that with soft returns and just kind of get this rag a little more even on that side. I would reduce the tracking on this serve hot or iced, make the letters a little bit closer together. And same with right here, the served hot or iced. Just reduce that tracking and bring them a bit closer together. Okay. Now in this one, we've got the text being cut off on the top. So make sure to bring that text in so we can see all of it there. And then the picture looks like it's been possibly stretched. So again, try doing that thing to get the picture so that it's not being stretched perspective-wise. And then all three of these, I do like your Sacramento, California. That's nice. On all three of these, we want to make sure we've got, well, this one's pretty good, but we want to have high resolution imagery on these two so we're not getting pixelization in it. And I think you could probably find, for one thing, you'd want to make sure the fonts are consistent between the three of them. But of the three fonts, I think this Fun Night Live one looks like the most professional and goes best with it. I'd probably just use that same font on these other ones as well. And then with this syllable down here, this Sacramento of California, it might look nice just to extend it all the way to the sides instead of leaving this little yellow space there. You could just bring it to the bottom, bring it to the left. But this isn't bad necessarily. That's more just personal preference. But we are getting some white lines going across here. Again, that could be a, yeah, go in and see. And we've got these lines going around the S and the of. So go in and try to see where these lines are coming from and get rid of those. All right, with the Walmart brochure, so this is a nice clean look to it. We've got an orphan right here after this first paragraph, so we want to kind of work with the words in this to get rid of that. Make sure again that you're getting consistent spacing, so you can see how track this progress is pretty much right up against the paragraph below it. The stay motivated has quite a bit of space there, and then you'll be glad you started has a little bit of space. So make sure you've got a set amount, and paragraph styles are the way to do that, to set exactly how far you want the subheadlines to be from the text that follows it. Same here with the subheadlines. And in this one in particular, you see stretch is actually pretty close to that paragraph above it that has quite a bit of space below it. So we want to use that rule of proximity to get them close together. And then you've got a couple of orphans here with workout and with store that you want to get rid of. So this might take some finessing, and this isn't, if you can't find a good way to do this, it's not required. But I just want to point it out to you. If there was a way to shift these in a way, I mean, it's good that these are aligned. And again, it's the introduction to this walking at Walmart checklist. I was just thinking it would be nice if these aligned with each other at the top, but that's probably not going to work very well. I would, however, align their baselines. Make sure that you've got these baselines from the columns or from the bulleted lists aligned with each other from left to right. All right. Jazz concert. This is a nice way. I like the illustration you have back there. That looks very nice. On this one, the only thing I would say is you've got, so this banner is going a little off to the right too far, and then it's not quite going all the way to the left. Now, there's nothing wrong with it not going all the way to the left, but I would either have it go all the way to the left or I'd have it go a little less than all the way to the left, so we get a little more of this peeking out on the left side than we do now. Okay. And our tickets for this one. These are nice looking. I would bring this up so we don't have this little whitish gap appearing up here. And so this works well. Here you've got this dotted line showing this perforated, and that's where it's going to tear. On this side, there's kind of a white gap between it. I'd probably just close that white gap and put that dashed line there. And here, this is just a kerning issue. Move the W and the O a little closer together in row. See how R and O are really close together, and then W is quite far out there. Overall, I like these tickets quite a bit. Those are very nice. Okay. The wine bottle here. So this looks very nice on the front here. This government warning looks like it's getting a little low resolution. I would either make it smaller, or I would just type the words yourself so it's type instead of an image, because that's going to make it nice and sharp. You'd want to try to match the font if you did that. This contains sulfates. You see how, like, here in New Zealand and Napa Valley, those are like really popping out against that background, and the contained sulfates feels like it's kind of ghosted. It's not quite there, not quite popping out. So I don't know if it needs to be just retyped, if this is an image that's been put there, but make it like this one. Go in and type it so you've got a nice bright contained sulfates, like you do up here in the front. It stands out from there. And the same here. So this is just fairly low resolution. It's nice looking, but we want this to be nice and crisp. And then we want the text to pop out like it is on the tag. And you'd also probably want to bring them closer together. Not leave quite such a gap between the 2000 and New Zealand to be consistent with the other places. But yeah, just make sure this is nice and high resolution. Good job on the mock-up of it. Okay, so that's yours. So any questions on that, Donna? Overall, you've got some very nice stuff there. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, and again, you've got this will be recorded and posted on there, so you can just go through it a piece at a time, just play back what I talked about. And if you need some help from me or from Christy or something, then we'll be available to help as well. And just let me know if you need any files or templates for any of that. All right. Okay, so next, we're going to look at Denise's here. All right. So, very nice image. I like your color palette there. And all the imagery is very nice there. The one thing I would say is this Astoria it's getting lost in that background. There's just not enough contrast, particularly over here. And it's not as bad as where it starts, but over here it starts to really blend into there. So you're going to want to come up with something, either using a different color that makes it pop more. For example, this dark blue might stand out quite a bit, or putting something, using something, whether it's a background, a tag behind it, something like that. You could have a contrasting color down here, coming out from the right, but something that makes that pop out more from that background. All right, and there, see that color does look nice on that green there. Let me just zoom in. So this is very minor, but just make sure that you've got these aligned on the bottom. It looks like that might just be a PDF residual thing, but just double check it. And so here, yeah, this is popping out nicely there. We just want to have it against a brighter part. Maybe it's a matter of going into Photoshop and brightening up the image there if you can do it in a way that looks natural. because that does pop out pretty, nicely against that bright sky there. Okay. So moving down to your menu, this is kind of a fun, like looks like it appealed to like kids and families, sort of designed for it. So that's nice. We're cutting off the right side of the logo here, so make sure to fit that in a way where you get the entire logo, including that little strip that's sticking out there. Also, I would reduce the size of this badge so that you get a little more padding around that white. You don't necessarily want it to be just right up and touching the sides, that white shape that it's in front of. So here it looks like this isn't quite left aligned with the text below it. So make sure you get a nice left alignment. Same, be careful with the where things hyphenate. You may want to just turn hyphenation off, but where it's like marinated, sourdough is not bad, but Italian, that's not really a good place for it to break. Season's a little small to do a hyphenation with. Oh, pardon me. So, and a couple other things here. One, especially if it's all going to be, very lined up next to each other without any specific breaks like photos and stuff, we really want to make sure that we have those baseline grids the baseline aligned, so you can see again how if I draw a line under this side, it hits about halfway across over there. So we'd want these to start at the exact same point. The right columns will starting a little lower than the left column, so they'd get their baselines aligned. Also, I would personally recommend using some a different formatting for the different parts of this. For example, to kind of make the name of the item stand out a little bit. I do some sort of contrasting formatting. It can be a little bigger, it could be bold, it could be a different font, different color, but something to make those the title of each of those food items stand out from the rest of it. All right. Here, I would probably move this picture and even these down a little bit, give a little more padding between the top of that picture and the top of this text and that yellow banner above it. And here as well. You may even want to move this add super salad for $3 up in the banner, right underneath that pasta and entrees, since it is related to that. And then I'll give you a little more room to bring these up. And again, make sure that we're using the rule of proximity as far as spacing is concerned. So again, we've got these subheadings: Chino's giant meatballs, stuffed with flavor, baked fresh. They're quite far away from the food items that they're related to, the ones underneath them, and they're actually quite close to the food items they're not related to, the ones above them. So make sure to set a specific spacing for after and before, and make sure that that it's following that rule of proximity, where the part that comes after it, the part that's related to, is closer to it, and the part that comes before it, the part that isn't related, has some more distance. In those same lines, I'd move this 4 sizes to choose from closer to the actual sizes. Just bring those together since they are related. This font is a bit, I can't tell for sure, but it looks like it may all be bold. Let me just try something here. No, I guess it's not. Just oh yeah, so that's Arial rounded MT bold. I would go with a different font. First of all, Arial's not one that you typically want to use in professional design. And secondly, when everything's bolded, it gets hard to read. So we'd want to make sure that that you could bold the headlines, for example, the titles, and then not bold the actual text. But I would choose a different. I definitely would unbold the body text, the descriptions, and then I would personally choose something different than Arial as the font. Now here in Gino's Beverages, I just give a little more height to the yellow tab behind it so that there's a little bit of padding on the top and the bottom of this text rather than it being quite so like aligned up right at the top with the top and bottom of the text there. And then look, the line spacing of these beverages, the San Pellegrino seems like it's got more space between it and Aquafina than the other lines have, so make sure those are consistent. And these items again are the actual description. Bottled beverages, and that at the price is kind of the title for that. So I'd make sure that had the same contrast that we talked about doing with the other ones. This, I'd make it a bit smaller so you've got more padding around that outside. And again, if you need to use the original vector file, this is it's losing a lot of resolution, so it gets very pixelated. We want to make sure that is not the case. Make sure it's nice and sharp. Okay, so Stella's Foundation. I like this book photograph, nice and colorful. One thing that seems possibly just unnecessary here is this one, since it's not really clear how that is utilized. It's not showing up anywhere else. So I might just get rid of this one here. And also that's a fairly low resolution image there. On the letterhead, I would shift this down a bit and to the right a bit so you didn't have this little white line between it and the stroke. Just put it right up against the right and right down against this line that it sits on. On the business card, I would add an email address. That's something that you're generally going to want to have on any business card these days, is an email address. All right. Okay, so here we are into the National Community Bankers Association. Now this looks a little low resolution, so it may need to go re-export it from the original file. But we want to make sure we don't have any of this pixelization that's going on here. Good contrast there between those lines of text. Nice job on that. So one thing here, make sure that we've got a nice left alignment going down throughout the whole thing there. Looks like they're not quite left aligned. Some are shifting a little to the left and right from each other. And this is a personal preference one, but on these page numbers, they vary quite a bit in size, and I get that could just be a style choice. Personally, I would pick one and keep them all consistent in size. And make sure that your space between these green dividers and the text below them and the text above them is consistent. Make sure that everyone has the same amount of text below, the same amount of space to the text below it and the same amount of space to the text above it as the other ones do. We've got an orphan right here with communities we want to fix. Okay, so in here, make sure that you're setting either space between the paragraphs or a first line indent to designate when one paragraph ends and another begins. And this first L, oh, that's fine, Donna. Thanks for coming in. This first L would do well with a drop cap rather than going up so high. I'd probably switch that to be a drop cap there. Also, we've got quite a bit of gap here as employees and the shareholders. And I get that's a very large word, which is probably why that's doing that. You could play around with a soft return on the do, then the true, then the to kind of close that hole a little bit. Or you could do a hyphenation on shareholders, do share, and then hyphen down here, and then holders up there at the top. So here, I would put a little bit of space between the paragraphs, first of all, on the list, or I would align the list. So you see how right now the left alignment goes like with the number. So 1, and then don't is aligned with 1, use aligned with don't with 1. A lot of times the list you align those so that it's the word that aligns with. So that don't would be aligned with check, and you would be aligned with check, and would be aligned with check. Now that's going to make this fill more space, so that could be a problem, but that might break this up a little bit more. Watch out again for orphans, and it looks like there's some places where there's not a space between words where there should be. Like for example, this line right here under the word letter 2, under the number 2, the next line down, it's received approximately 5.3 billion offers. It looks like there's no space between received and approximately, or between approximately and 5.3, or between 5.3 and billion. And it looks like that's going on in a few places in this text. So go through and make sure that you've got the spaces needed between the different lines there. So here, rather than have it be a dash, I would do this as a bulleted list. And in this situation, I would definitely align the subsequent lines with the first word of the first line, not with the dash or bullet. So security, for example, here would align with call, and so on and so forth, instead of with the dash. And you can do that by using the regular bulleted list function in InDesign. We've got an orphan here with yourself we want to get rid of. Here, I would bring this image all the way to the top, and I'd bring it all the way out to the sides. Rather than leaving these white lines on the side and this little thin white line on the top, I just bring it all out so it filled that whole section. And same with these banners, this gold banner and this black banner, just make sure they go all the way to the left, just like they're going all the way to the right. Here I would also close this leading. So you want this to be consistent with the other articles. Got this kind of double spaced leading there. So close that down so that it's back to the single spacing. But again, you want to have either some extra space or a first line indent again between the paragraphs in order to designate where those paragraphs end and begin. But just try to make this whole article more similar in formatting to the other articles in the magazine. And I would probably move this ad a bit to the right to allow this paragraph, or well, I guess that column is going to be that way anyway. It just feels like there's quite a bit of unused space over there. And then you've got this red line down here that I would get rid of that's running there. Again, some pretty large gaps in the space right here. Make sure those are consistent with the other ones. Previously, your bulleted lists didn't even have any gap at all between the bullets. So we want that to be consistent. And then again, make sure that you're aligned, that you're using the bulleted list function so that you've got the alignment. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I'm here in InDesign, and I'm going to turn this into a bulleted list, I go to type, and I go to bullet and numbered list, apply bullets. Okay, So now you can see that everywhere where a bullet is, the alignment is between the text. The bullets stick out to the left a bit, and the text doesn't fall underneath the bullets. It keeps a nice clean left alignment in the text itself. So, and again, going with contrast, so you've got these headlines or these subheadings or pullouts. It says, here's a list of basic information. No such thing as good debt. They're a sans serif font versus a serif font, but they're still very fine and they're small, and there's not really enough contrast to designate that those are subheadings. So I would do something more with it, bold it, make a different color, something more to make it stand out and create contrast with the rest of the text. Okay, so looking at your wine bottle here, I like this illustrated pattern across the top, and this font you've chosen for Serendipity is very nice. Yeah, overall, I think this looks really nice. With your mock-up, be sure to use the tools in Photoshop to kind of give, or in Illustrator, I guess, to kind of give this some perspective as it wraps on the bottle and some shading as well. It'll make a big difference on your mock-up there. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at Megan's now. And again, Denise, if you have any questions for me, definitely email me and let me know. All right, so Megan's got some nice contrast created here with these big white letters against the background. Here with the banners, make sure that they're aligning right. It's sticking up higher on the left and right, and it's not quite going all the way to the bottom. Now, if you don't need it to go to the bottom, you'll want to go less to the bottom so that it stands out as being, that part of the bottom that's uncovered stands out more. But I would say probably you'd want to just go all the way to the top and bottom and line up there. Now, I would bring this third one here, excuse me, closer in line and formatting with the first two. You switch to a very different font and a very different style overall. But this was actually working really nice. You've got a nice font here, and it stands out well against the background. I would do the same on this one, and then I would try to find a different picture. The problem is you've got these very dark buildings here, not much contrasting on the lake. It's not the best image of Lake Anna in order to really sell it. So I try to find something that's a little brighter and a little more representative of the city, like you have up on these top two, than that one there. All right, going to your State Trooper magazine here. So this is kind of tough. This is one of those situations where you kind of have to play with some things, make some decisions. Overall, I think this does a good job of standing against the front, but this training one, it's really kind of getting difficult to read over this badge. Now, that could be fixed by moving that one to the right a little bit and maybe creating some sort of an alignment pattern between them. But again, you've got this nice clean alignment right now. That could be fixed by maybe shifting all of them to the right a little bit, maybe aligning it with this May down below. But I would play around with that and see if there's a way you can shift things so that you don't lose this text behind the badge, or in front of the badge, I should say. Here, I'd make sure to align these together across the columns, so the 4 and the 5 and the subhead and so forth, to get them nice and aligned. I would use a soft return to bring down some more words, so the partners isn't alone down here. You can see state troopers and then break it there, canine partners, or you could use state troopers and then break it there, their canine partners. That one looks nice. Make sure that we've got the same spacing between these 3 items. These 2 are quite close together, and this one's a bit further off to the side. It also might be nice, so here you've got this smooth line kind of moving from this one to this one, then it juts back up on that one. If you could arrange it so it maybe had a straight progression down through all of them, would look nice. And make sure it's hard to tell with this PDF. Let me just try here. But if it's not, so it looks like they're not, the one on the right isn't quite aligned on the bottom either. So make sure to get that aligned. And export this as a spread so that you can see how the pages look, right? I'm seeing table of, and then contents. And it makes, when you're actually looking at these, it's all going to be in one big spread. So you want to look at that as a spread when you are looking, when you're judging it too, so that you can really see how are these going to work together. For example, I want to see how this 6 works with these ones, and whether the alignment is right on that or not. And it's hard to do without it being as a spread. And it looks like, so the way this is set up, since this is a spread, your page number is on the inside of the spread, meaning you'd have page 2 and page 3 right next to each other. Generally, you want to have the page number on the outside of the spread, and you don't really have to say page. You could just put 2, and then over here 3, but move those so they're the outside of the spread and are just using the number itself instead of having the word page. So be careful with drop shadows, especially pretty big ones like on the State Trooper boot camp. I don't think that's working as well with the drop shadow. The yellow is working okay with the drop shadow, as long as it's a mild one. With the State Trooper one, it's kind of getting a little lost too. I would probably put some sort of a banner behind this text up here, the State Trooper boot camp, come train with the best of the best, and then lose the drop shadow up here. And then you could probably keep it down with this one down here, but I'd put a banner up there and lose that. Also, since this is going, don't necessarily need to keep a margin. You could have this fill the entire page, go edge to edge, or you could move it to the edge on the right side. Well, this spread would be left, so you can move to this edge on the left side. Would look nice instead of leaving just the straight margin around the whole thing when it's such a large image. And again, move those page numbers to the outside of the spread and lose the word page. This image here, I would get rid of the stroke on that. And then with this text, the justified alignment is causing some pretty large gaps between certain words. And so you may want to either shift to a left alignment, or you'll need to play around with some of the words and some of the, like soft returns and stuff in order to get rid of, clean up this spacing. I would probably just do left alignment personally. Now, make sure that we are using consistent formatting throughout. You can see that this text here is a smaller font. Here, this font seems to get quite large. In fact, I'd say too big for a body text of an article. Let me see. So that is 24 font. And we want body text to be between about 8 and 12. So it's about twice as big as we'd want body text to be. So reduce this down maybe like to an 11 or so. And then again, I would avoid using Arial. So this is the Arial font, and I would probably choose a different font for that. Also, we've got a couple orphans here, festivities and right. We want to make sure and get rid of those orphans. One is another orphan right here. And these purple shapes, I don't think need strokes on them. You don't have a stroke on the blue here, but then you do on the purple. And same with this one back there. Okay, so we're on to the menu. Now the menu appears to be in the wrong order. This would be the cover for the menu, I believe. Or let's see if we want to definitely establish some page as the cover to the menu. Generally, you're gonna have the drinks on the like near the end of the menu, so I'd probably switch this to be the front page, and then probably go either to pizza or yeah, you could do like page 2, page 3, and then I'd switch this one to be the last page, so that it stands out, or so it goes the normal flow of a menu. I would get rid of the underline under this sentence here, salad dressings packed with flavor. And I'd move that sentence a bit closer up under soups and salads. Now, make sure you've got some consistency on these borders. Notice, for example, here, the green is on top of the red on the top and on the bottom. Here, the green is on top of the red on the right, but it's not on top of the red on the left. So we want to make sure and make it consistent. Also, if you're going to go with the faded color, I'd go with the faded color everywhere. Or if you're going to go to the solid color, I'd go with the solid color everywhere. Also, notice the widths of them. So this one is very wide. This one is more narrow. These ones are close, but not the same. We want to have a consistency there that stays the same throughout the whole thing. And that holds true for these later pages as well. I'd also get rid of this menu, this underline here. And Legendary Combinations is the title of the section for these two combination pizzas. So we want those to be down close to it. Notice Chicken Favorites you have close to the buffalo chicken, but then From the Garden and Legendary Combinations you have far away from their pizzas. So move those down, use that rule of proximity to put those subheadings up with the information that it's referring to. Same, I'd get rid of this underline here. And on this one here. We've got, looks like a return that was meant to happen here. So it was a tomato and then return all on fresh focaccia. So get rid of that and bring that all on fresh focaccia up to the same way as tomato. Excuse me. All right. So now we are looking at the history of William Caslin. This has a nice retro look to it, which I think it looks nice. I would shift this entire thing, this call out that has, or pull out that has this blue frame, I'd shift it down a little bit so it's not quite so up against the text above it, and you've got some space below it that you can do that. So just shift the whole thing down a bit, kind of center it between this text above and the text below. I would get rid of, so you've got this black stroke on this left brown. So get rid of that black stroke so you don't have these lines cutting off the border there. Cute illustration. I'd shift that illustration down a bit though. You could align kind of the top illustration with the top of this paragraph over on the right there. Now, make sure you've got consistent, you're using a first line indent but you don't have one here. So go ahead and make sure you've got a first line indent on that one as well. And then again, get rid of the stroke on this brown border. Now, on this Barberton, Ohio, I would go again. It looks like that may be the same font. I would use the same font you're using with those billboards and the white. I think that worked well there. And again, be thinking alignment of these elements as well. You know, you could bring down this this stamp thing, or move up this a little bit so you get some alignment between maybe the top of this text, the top of that line, and the top of the stamp thing. Okay, so here, over on this right one, we've got kind of something going on with the, like you've got a very large first line indent before the word walking, where you don't have one at all elsewhere, so I'd get rid of that. And then the last line is centered. We want to make sure that last line is left aligned. Also, make sure we have a baseline grid lining up these baselines. You can see, especially right here is where it's most noticeable, where we have quite a bit of disalignment between those. And we want to make sure those are lined up at the baseline. Here, the last line is also centered on the bottom of this left thing. So make sure that's left aligned. I would bring these track your progress, stretch, so closer to the paragraph they're relating to. That'll also give you a little more room down at the bottom of that left paragraph. And over here, it looks like this walking with Walmart isn't quite centered, or this isn't quite centered, but you've got walking at Walmart and then trim your waistline, improve your health, live better. And those kind of left aligned, but not quite. And then this one's indented a bit. So, you know, here, this is more centered under prepare yourself to walk. So it seems like you would want walking at Walmart to be centered with this text below, and then these blue lines to be centered underneath that walking at Walmart. Same here, we've got some alignment. This isn't quite centered under that. I'd probably turn this into a bolted list or a checklist even. You can do little boxes they can check. The address, so you've got address, the address left line with address, and the web address left line with web address, but you don't have them left aligned with each other. So we want to make sure we've got some consistent alignment going through this section here in particular. And you've got an orphan there with health you want to get rid of. And then here, I would just add a little more space so that this Y and G aren't coming and like bumping into the word below it. But again, make that space consistent with all the headlines. Bring them all a bit closer, but not quite this close. Okay? So again, if you have any questions on that, Megan, please let me know. Those three are the only ones we have time for today, but on Thursday we'll be spending really the whole day doing these. And don't worry, I'll definitely make sure everyone's gets done. Even if we don't have time to do it all in class on Thursday, I'll do a separate recording. Everyone will definitely have feedback on these by the end of the day on Thursday. And please let me know if you have questions after you watch this. And otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic couple of days, and I will see you guys on Thursday.